Security at Air Force Base. We have ICBMs, so security is kind of a big deal. Only shit that ever happened was some hippies jumped a couple fences and were hitting a hardened blast door with a sledgehammer, trying to sabotage the nukes. It was the top cover for a retractable antenna. They were nowhere near the nukes. Bored as shit, hanging out on the tarmac near a little used airstrip at one end of the base. All air traffic comes through the other end. Security patrol starts screaming into radio that they have an unknown situation. Everybody scrambles, chambering pistols, grabbing M16s. Patrol is still screaming into radio. Sounds scared shitless and is not making any sense. Second patrol is dispatched to back them up and find out what the hell is going on. We're on standby in case they need additional backup. Don't even have Humvees. We're still rolling in old-ass Blazers. Suddenly, someone calls over the radio reporting unidentified radar contact that isn't responding to hails. Clusterfuck as everyone scrambles to respond to that. They wheel an old as fuck M167 Vads out of the hangar and start loading it. Other end of base reports they're loading up a pair of helicopters with an infantry squad each and arming the door gunners. What the actual fuck is going on? Gunshots heard in the distance. Somebody's going full mad minute. Second patrol radios in, screaming they need backup now. We roll out there. Both patrols have literally circled their vehicles like a wagon train under attack by Indians and are hiding behind / under them, scared shitless. We don't see anything. First patrol spotted what they thought was an animal on all fours until it stood up on its hind legs, ran, and jumped over the fence. Fucking 12-foot fence topped with razor wire. They freaked out and called for backup. Second patrol shows up, calls bullshit. They split up to search for clues, Scooby-Doo style. First patrol spots it again, hiding in a drainage ditch. A guy in second patrol says another thing grabbed him from behind and lifted him off the ground. He panics and empties the magazine of his M16, fortunately not hitting any of our guys. Whatever has him drops him and jumps over the fence to join the first thing. Everybody freaks the fuck out, circles the wagons, and establishes a defensive perimeter while crying for backup. These are Air Force guys who spend all night drinking coffee on a base in the middle of the US during peacetime. They are not prepared for this shit. We roll up and search for the monsters. We ain't found shit. Guys at the other end of the base are reporting a blue light hovering over the missile silos. Our choppers haven't finished loading up yet. Base commander says the light/aircraft is not ours, so smoke it. We hear the VADs open up and see tracers arcing into the night sky. Holy shit, that's beautiful. No explosion. Nothing. We can't see the light from here, thanks to a small hill. Radio reports that mysterious light shot over to the airfield after being fired on, and presumably missed, hovered for a few seconds, then disappeared. Entire base is scrambling. Anyone who is not awake already woke up as soon as the Vulcan opened up. Search entire base and perimeter. Nada. The entire thing is announced as a false alarm due to jittery nerves. Patrol guys put on leave for a couple weeks. Then when they come back, they are assigned to guard a different part of the base. I get assigned to patrol that area instead of my cushy spot back at Security HQ. Motherfucker. Never see anything creepy or unexplainable the entire 2 years I'm there until I get out. So, yeah, I somehow managed to miss everything despite being in the middle of it. Me and my best friend and our girlfriends were once chased out the ruins of an old mining camp / ghost town by a werewolf, and I mean that sincerely. It was chasing us off, not hunting us, because if it had been, I have no doubt we'd all be dead. This was back in the autumn of 1993 in Alabama, up near the Talladega National Forest, off some dirt trails near a place called Gant's Quarry. The buildings still standing are wooden structures, though they are falling apart and really not all that safe to fuck around with, but we'd found one that was still pretty solid and planned on camping in it through the night. Typical teenage shit, where we'd all alibi each other to stay out all night. We got there around 6 or so, just as the sun was starting to set. We were pretty well prepared. Sleeping bags, flashlights, my buddy's hunting rifle, a boombox, and plenty of beer. We were having a great time, but as we were winding down for the night, around 1 a.m., we started hearing yips and howls. Coyotes. The place still had a standing door, so we pushed it shut and wedged it shut, but the girls were still scared. My friend and I went out and shot off a couple of rounds that scared the coyotes off. About 20 minutes after we got settled back down, we heard the werewolf. It was eerie because it didn't sound like the coyotes. Its howl was way deeper, kind of mournful sounding, and it also did not sound like any wolf you've ever heard before. It didn't sound like a person exactly, but it sure did not sound like a wolf. More like something trying to sound like one. Neither me nor my friend said anything because we did not want to freak out the girls any more than they already were, but we had spent a lot of time in the woods and we both knew that whatever we were hearing was not a wolf. Officially, there aren't any wolves in Alabama, but anyone who's ever hunted there knows that's bullshit. Coyotes, coy dogs, and the red wolves they say are extinct. It howled twice, really long, then it was quiet for a few minutes. Then it growled right outside the building, shack that we were in. It was so deep, you could feel it rattling in your own chest, and it scared the shit out of all of us. My friend and I both did that thing guys do when they're young, stupid, and there are girls to impress. We pretended to be mad instead of scared and got up, stomping and yelling, before grabbing a couple of flashlights and the gun to go out there. The girls was seriously freaking out at this point, telling us not to go out there and just let it go away. But out we went. We made a circle of the building, shining our lights all around, but we did not see anything. We were on our way back inside when I saw it. It was maybe 20 or 30 yards back down the trail we drove in on, looking like the silhouette of the biggest dog you've ever seen in your life. My friend shouldered his rifle, but I stopped him, told him not to shoot it. I have nothing against wolves, but that wasn't really what I was thinking. It felt off to me, and I was already thinking something spookier than just a wolf. Instead, my friend fired another warning shot, and then it stood up. He looked at it, and told me to go get the girls, because we were leaving. It took a little convincing to get the girls back out of the shack, but once they saw it back there, at the edge of my buddy's flashlight, looking exactly like what it was, they bolted straight for the truck. We followed, and the whole time, it just continued standing there, stock still. It growled again, and we realized it might have never been any closer than it was at that moment. It made me think it might have been watching us on our whole patrol, and that creeped me out even more. We bounced out of there, doing 30 on that washed out trail, 50 on good stretches, but I could still see it behind us for a good while. My eyes were glued to the side view mirror. It would run on all fours, close some distance, then stand up again, like it was hurting us. We were headed further in on the trail, and had no idea where it was going to come out, or even if it was going to come out, but unless we wanted to drive right by that thing, we didn't really have a choice. Eventually, I stopped seeing it in the mirror, and not long after that, we came out on a little back road that wound back around to somewhere we knew. My buddy and I were already getting over our fear as soon as we saw the paved road, and we were talking about what we'd seen, sort of comparing notes, but the girls would barely say anything besides telling us to stop talking about it, almost like they thought that would make it come back. Like I said earlier, both of them ended up breaking contact with us shortly after, and we both know why they did not want to be reminded. We went back there a few times over the years, but never experienced anything else like that. One thing I did find interesting is between that night and our first trip back, something burned down the shack we'd stayed in. I was a trucker for a few years, back in the early 2000s. Most of the time, things went pretty smoothly. I'd get from point A to point B and move on to the next job. But being a trucker, you spend a lot of time on the road, both day and night. So, it's not too uncommon to experience something out of the ordinary in this line of work. I've seen a bit of stuff I could not explain, For example, driving north on I-5 to make a delivery in Washington. It's pretty late, and I've been on the road for several hours, fighting just to keep my eyes open, but eventually give in and pull into a rest area. Just for the record, probably in Oregon at this point, may have been far northern Cali. Lot is empty except for my rig. Lock my doors, get undressed, slip under the sheets in the cabin, and set alarm for around dawn. I've got plenty of time to make my window. Roll over onto side, where I have a slight view of the forest edge bordering the rest area. Through weary eyes, I spot a figure at the tree line, standing behind a fence. Rub my eyes and look again. No one there. I must be starting to dream. Close my eyes and lead my thoughts to less frightening things. I'm about to fall asleep when I hear what sounds like someone pulling on the driver's side door handle. Click, click, click. Hello? Silence. Turn onto my stomach and look through the window above my pillow. Nothing there. Rest my head on the pillow and try to fall asleep. A trickle of unease building inside me. Click, click, click from the passenger side door. Immediately sit up. Look out the door window. In the dim moonlight, I see a humanoid figure duck out of view. I scramble to look outside the window on the other side of the cabin, but I see nothing. Who or what is trying to get in here? I sit motionless for what felt like several minutes, the silence rending my ears. The silence is broken by the sound of a moderately sized rock hitting the passenger side door, then another hitting the window. I immediately grab my keys and turn the engine and lights on, illuminating the surrounding area. I see a scrawny, naked human a few feet away from the door staring maliciously at me through the window. He looks very off. Sunken eyes, grey varicose veins, and completely devoid of hair. He lets out a guttural shriek and runs at the door, grabbing at the handle and slamming against the window with his grimy palms. No time to get dressed. I put the truck into gear and peel out, fueled with enough adrenaline to get me at least another hour away before I stop at another rest stop. Barely slept that night. I have more if anyone will be interested. Might take a little while though. I'm going out for drinks with some friends soon. This happened maybe a year before the previous event. It's early evening, and I'm on a long haul. On I-15, within Utah's borders. On a thin stretch of road with mostly barren land on either side. Despite the noise from my engine and the music playing through my speakers, I started to hear this really loud humming sound that seemed to come from everywhere. I'm looking in my mirrors, at my windows, at my charts. I have no idea where the sound is coming from. The sound does not dissipate for the next several minutes. The sound starts to get louder, and I roll down my window and peer outside, looking above me. There's this weird light in the air, like a holy white orb. Suddenly, there is a large boom, and it just disappears. Suddenly, the lights in my cabin turn off and the engine sputters, before releasing a large amount of smoke. With little control, I steer my rig to the edge of the road and get out. It looks like the inside of the truck exploded. Multiple instruments and machines are damaged beyond repair. Battery turns out to be fucked and needs to be replaced. Had to have someone take my load for me while I had my truck repaired. Seen some weird shit in the sky before, but nothing like that. Be last Christmas. Driving to GF's house 6 hours away. Decide to leave at midnight so we can surprise the family. Be me, GF, and her sister, and sister's BF in car. Driving along at around 3 a.m. Everyone is asleep except for me. Middle of rural Texas. No towns or anything for miles. See car on side of road with hazards on. Decide to call the cops, just in case guy needs help. Right as I pull out my phone, I see some guy walking down the side of the road. Start slowing down to see if he needs help. Getting closer, and see that this dude is at least 7 feet tall. Start feeling a bit antsy. Wake everyone up, just to help calm my nerves a bit. Getting closer, and realize it's walking on all fours, almost like a skinny ape. GF yells at me to just keep going and call the police. Agree, but really want to get a better look at this thing. down to about 5 miles per hour, and about to pass by it. All of us look over and realize its face is human. It turns over to look at us. Its face is uncanny valley as fuck, almost iRobot looking. All of us scream, and I slam my foot on the gas. It whips its 5-foot-long arm at the car and clips the back. Speed the fuck out of there. See it galloping towards us. Lose him in about a minute, but the girls in the car are crying, and me and the other guy are both freaking out. Finally call the cops and tell them about what happened. Said they'd go check it out. Never found out what happened with that. Still scares me when I think about it. Take a completely different route to get there now, just to avoid that damn stretch of road. Really wish the damn cops had gotten back to me after they figured out what happened. Not really a spooky story or anything, but my mom, who has never mentioned any other paranormal stuff at all, is convinced my late great-grandma, who died before I was born, was 100% an honest-to-God witch. Be my mom, age 11 or something, 1970s. Planned slumber party with some friends from school at my great-grandma's. She had a large house, slightly outside of town, and lived alone. Mom and 3 other girls at my grandma's. It's already late, 9 or 10 p.m., just before bedtime, already dark out. Just chilling in the living room, talking about girl stuff, their insecurities, etc. One girl has a bunch of warts on her hands, apparently had them since birth, is really insecure about it and complains to my mom and friends. Great-grandma enters the room, hears the discussion, asks wart girl, "You want me to make the warts go away?" Girl, unsure but hopeful, sure, yes please. Great-grandma takes girl out on the balcony. Mom and friends follow, 'cause curious. Bright moonlit night outside. Great-grandma takes wart girl's hands in her own. No fancy ceremony, no witchy potions, no occult language or spells, just holds wart girl's hands up into the moonlight and says, "Begone." Nothing happens. Great-grandma just smiles, ruffles girl's hair, says to wart girl, mom and friends, "Okay, you kids can go to sleep now." They go to sleep. Next morning, the warts are fucking gone. No scars, no marks, not a trace. Just perfectly normal skin, as if she never had warts in the first place. Ex-wart girl is happy. Mom and friends are astonished. Thank great-grandma and go home. Don't realize how goddamn strange this is, because they are 11-year-old girls. Never ask great-grandma about it, because kids have other things on their mind. Great-grandma passed away a few years later, when my mom was 14 or something. Well, that's it. Don't really have any of the stories, except a casual, "Yeah, your great-grandma was always kinda strange," with no further commentary from my grandma when I asked her about the story my mom told me. Be me. College. Get lucky, and college hires me while in college to run their help desk. Oh yes, I'm getting my loans paid off. Move into office. Have a normal IT existence, except there's a small metal door in my office inside a cabinet. Open it up with boss one day. Goes into space between walls. Pitch black every way. Think nothing of it. 3 months in, I start getting pungent shit smells in my office. Luckily, other people smell it too. I hear laughing and giggling sometimes next to me, but then women's restroom is next to my door. Office starts complaining to management about the shit smell, giggling, pounding and noisy women. Yeah, we'll do something about it. They send an email PSA. Thanks for nothing. Shit smell is getting rank. I can no longer hold meetings in my office. I need to work in the tech lab now, and it's playing havoc. Management is getting worried about a busted pipe, so they close down the women's restroom. They are puzzled who is using it because there aren't any women in the entire building. Shit smell does not go away. Management is freaking out. Has plumbers tear out the men's. Still nothing. Eternal turd wafers. Final summer comes. We crack the windows because we are dying. Plumber asks for access between the walls. They are checking something. Open up the metal door, and the most overpowering stench just flows out. Some fucking maniac had been shitting between the walls and making turd art for an entire year. Painting turd murals, writing poems interred on my door, even living there, complete with sleeping bag and lamp and rows of piss jugs. Leonardo da Vinci has so utterly destroyed the space between walls, management says fuck it and renovated the women's bathroom after knocking a hole in it for access. They always suspected a guy, but I heard women giggling all the time. Alright, here goes. A bit of background of who I am and what I do for a living. This will give a bit of context on how I've come across these reports. For the last 15 years, I've been employed as a licensed psychologist in Virginia. The firm I work with takes subcontracted work from the federal government. The purpose of this work is to give psychological evaluations and reports on cases that the state does not want to be subject to various oversight agencies. If there is an instance where the feds need an interview and analysis done quickly and discreetly, then we are hired to do this. The pay is good, and the job has allowed me to travel all over the country. But with all of that exposition out of the way, it's time to move on to the story. Be an area in the 912 area code of Georgia. Be an industrial area used mainly for the manufacturing of chemicals. For about 3 weeks, the nighttime security has been reporting to the higher-ups about sounds in the woods surrounding the area. Wildlife in the vicinity is not uncommon, but what is unnerving the guards is the volume the sounds are being made at. They are reporting rustling in the woods, like a truck is moving through it, followed by what can only be described as a massive fan oscillating. Reports continue for a few more days, but finally, the latest claims make the nearby chemical plant take action. The security detail reports about a very musky odor coming from the woods in the direction of the sounds, followed by a fog of white vapor rising from the ground. Fearing a chemical leak from underground pipes, they call in a state inspector. The idea was for the state inspector to supervise the plant's hired inspector to get an investigation without any heresy between the company and the government. They go into the woods to do their inspection. 2 days later, I'm arriving in the area after a flight. My purpose was to interview the state inspector. I was to find out for the feds and the EPA why there was 1 dead man and 3 others severely injured. I was not there to solve a death, but rather to interview a state employee to register their state of mind. I arrive at a local hospital in the same city as the industrial area. I call my contact, and they come down to the parking lot to greet me. I'm ushered into the inspector's hospital room by 2 police officers. In it, I see a man of Middle Eastern ethnicity. He looks to be in his late 40s. His face is swollen, like he has had an allergic reaction. There are yellow welts all over his face and neck, as well as his arms and hands. He is wearing an oxygen mask. The man has clearly been in a lot of shit. I sit by him and begin to get to work, introducing myself and beginning to make a dialogue between him and myself. He is hesitant to talk at first, but after an hour or so, we were able to get down to the matter at hand. He tells me that initially, he and the other inspector did a cursory look into the area where the sounds, smells, and vapors were coming from. They found a curious, sticky residue on the foliage and tree bark. The ground had been disturbed, with what looks like drag marks dotting between the trees. Only these markings would have to have been made by something the size of a small car. They could see where nearby trees had been leaned over it, like a tractor had pushed into them. Hearing this, I asked the men why hadn't the company contacted the police. If there were signs or unauthorized activity, then law enforcement should be made aware, especially around dangerous chemicals. The man in his hospital bed chuckled, then coughed. I asked them the same question, but as far as they knew, nothing was out of the ordinary, aside from the reports of sounds of movements in the woods by trigger-happy night guards. I continued my interview with him. He explained that later in the night, they were going to go into the woods with a group of security to see what was the source of all the commotion. Night fell, and the 2 inspectors, accompanied by 3 security officers, made their way into the woods when the sounds began. He said they walked closer and closer past the pine trees towards the noise. As they did, they could make out what sounded like something large being dragged on the ground. They then heard slurping sounds and a slight buzz. The guards got nervous and upholstered their guns. The 5 men made their way closer and closer. As the man was telling me his story, his heart monitor began to increase in its beeps. His face made a twisted sneer of disgust as he recalled to me the smell they were engulfed in as they were about halfway from the epicenter of the noise. He said it was a vile combination of rotten eggs, burning tires, and decaying deer. It was at that point that they began to see the white vapor on the ground. Eventually, they made their way to almost on top of the sound. The men took a deep breath and said, "That is when the shooting started." One of the guards saw it first and began to unload into a black mass in front of the group. There was a loud shriek, like nails on a chalkboard, and a vuvuzela. The man motioned with his hand and said that he shined his flashlight onto the mass. He went quiet for a few moments, but slowly he told me what he saw. It was what he described as a cross between a wasp at the front, but in the back was like a slug. It was about 5 meters in length and 2 meters high. It began to move towards them at an astonishing pace. It released the foul-smelling white vapor from holes in its body every time it moved. There was barely any time to act as the creature swiped at the ground with its insectoid legs and knocked all of them down. The man looked down and told me that that was the last thing he remembered. We finished our interview from there and I left him to himself. The report was handed over to my contact. I left it to him from there. The industrial area was closed for 18 months for renovations. The woods around the area was bulldozed. I am unaware at what point during the encounter did the other inspector die. 3 of my colleagues interviewed the other witnesses. Officially, the death and injuries are because of an animal attack. Pick related is a sketch one of my colleagues was able to snake. It is a rendition from one of the guards of what he saw.